Welcome back. It's time. I've been itching to get back into it. We left off last night on a on a nice spot. On a nice spot, nice little the creep factor really crescendoed at the end of chapter 6. So today we pick up chapter 7. Gonna get at least to 9, but we'll see what happens from there. See if the blood moves us to continue. But for today, it's gonna be chapter 7 through 9 for certain. At least those two. Now we're over halfway through the book right now. I think we got what? 60 pages left, something like that. If even that, yeah. 60 or 70 pages left, so we're pretty well into it. I'm looking to finish this book up by the end of the week, so hopefully we can get that cleared. Now, without any further ado, and I will be drinking tonight, so apologies in advance. Chapter 7. I found Roderick at breakfast before Denton. Have you seen Maddie today? I asked. She was sleepwalking again last night, and she seemed very confused. She didn't know me, and she couldn't talk very well. I decided not to mention that terrible smile or the way her stiff walk had reminded me of the strange crawling hair. That happens sometimes, said Roderick, staring at his plate. Can't her maid keep her from walking? Her maid died 3 months ago. This rocked me back. No maid. Of course, they wouldn't have money to hire a new one. I was an ass. I tried again. Her hair is falling out. She's shedding. It's terrible. Her hair. Yes. Roderick nodded. After a moment, he added, that's been happening. The servants try to clean it up, but... Roderick. The defeat in his voice infuriated me. Couldn't he see that his sister was dying? You have to do something. Do what? He slammed his fist down on the sideboard with sudden rage. Don't you think I know? Don't you think I'd fix it if I could? Take her to Paris, blow up this damned house, fill that accursed lake? I blinked at him. Part of me said that blowing up the house was not actually a solution to Madeline's problems, but another part was already calculating how much dynamite would be required. He must have read my expression because he sagged in his chair, his rage gone as quickly as it had come. Don't tempt me, Easton. I already know where I'd put the match. I believe the lieutenant actually meant that you should get another doctor, said Denton from the doorway. He nodded to me. Morning, Easton. That's not exactly what I meant, I said, even though the thought of calling a specialist from Paris had crossed my mind. I don't know why not, said Denton. I can't have impressed you with my depth of knowledge of her case. He didn't seem particularly offended. Hi, Moon. You know more about it than I do, certainly. Have you seen how her hair is falling out? I have. He glared at his cup. Not surprising in a severe illness. Now ask me how she still has any hair left to shed. I paused with my tea halfway to my lips. I don't know, he said, answering the question anyway. No goddamn idea. If it's falling out like that, it should be regrowing. It shouldn't be regrowing, but it is. Coming in stark white, too, I said. Yes. Closest I can guess is that it's not growing so much as the follicles and the skin receding, the same way that people grow hair after they've died. He cut himself off and applied himself savagely to his breakfast. No one else, said Roderick. No more doctors. This has all gone much farther than it should have already. I do not want Madeline poked and prodded like some kind of animal in a cage. His sudden animation seemed to have fled. He leaned against the sideboard, swaying as if exhausted. I bowed my head, made my excuses, and headed for the stables. This is all a mess, boy, I told Hob. His ears indicated that he agreed, particularly since he was not being given a treat. Speaking of, I dug an apple out of a nearby saddlebag. There had been large orchards farther down the mountain, and I had purchased several bags, then forgotten about them. Hob, it seemed, had not. I'm starting to wonder if there really is something in the water, something fatal. Hob expressed that lack of apples might prove equally fatal. Denton doesn't know. I don't know who else to ask. The doctor's gelding put his nose over the over the stall door, and though he offered no useful advice, I held an apple to him as well. Satisfied, equine crunching sounds followed me as I went for looking for Usher's library. Every manor house has one, of course. I don't know what I expected to do there. It's not as if I'm a terribly keen reader. And I knew that even a medical textbook would probably be beyond my ability, particularly in another language. I speak quite good Moravian, French, and English, and I can manage to get by in German. Mostly because Germans always instantly switch to another language when they inevitably speak better than you do and politely ask you to practice it with them. But reading in those languages is something else again, particularly when it's technical. Still, I had to try. I had some idea in my head that there might be a disease among the hares that had also affected Maddie. If not a disease, perhaps a parasite. Undercooked pork and the like can sicken a human, so why not something in a hare? The problem, of course, was that I only had a hunter's notion of what's inside the hare is supposed to look like. Of what the inside of a hare is supposed to look like. So if it was anything more subtle than there's a large squirmy bit where a large squirmy bit does not belong, I could not tell merely by shooting a hare and dissecting it. Hence the library. Rows of leather bindings stared down on me from high shelves. There was no fire laid in the grate, and the cold, creeping damp hung in the air like fog. Looking up at all those bindings, my heart sank. What was I even looking for? A book that said the anatomy of a European hare with clearly labeled diagrams for a novice? Perhaps? Do they even make books like that? Well, they ought to. I grumbled to myself. It'd be more useful than half the books that get written these days. How many works on the life of Lord Byron does one world really need? I pulled out a book at random and opened it. I tried to open it. The swollen pages stuck together. I fitted my fingernail between two of them and managed to pry them apart, only to rip one in half and leave most of it stuck to the opposite page. The book wasn't just damp. It had been soggy for so long that it had practically turned to mush. I groaned and pulled out another book. This one's pages were wavy from having swollen and dried, and while it opened, there was a line of mold around the edge so dark that it almost could have been mistaken for a decorative border. Christ's blood, I muttered to myself. Ah, said Roger from the doorway. You have found the great library. Pride of generations of ushers. He must have seen my expression because his lips twisted into a humorless smile. Don't worry, my father sold all the rare books already. We didn't lose anything much. Are they all like this? I asked, gazing upon the bookshelves with their burden of rotting words. Every last one. The servants dry some of them to use as tinder now and again. They'll burn if you get them hot enough. His gaze swept across the shelves as if picturing them in flame. I did not know what to say. How do you expect sympathy for a man's manor house gone to ruin? I struggled for a joke instead. Should have stayed in Galatia, Roderick. Then you could have gone to the Royal Lending Library and checked out a book. We should have all stayed in Galatia, he said, not bothering with my attempted humor. My mother was right. You can both come stay with me, I said. Admittedly, I only own one very small former hunting lodge, and we'd be living in each other's pockets, but it's a snug little place. Roderick shook his head. She won't leave, he repeated. And he looked around the room, a man gazing upon the face of his enemy. I begin to think that this place has killed all of us in its time. Perhaps it's too late for me as well. It's only a building, Roderick. Is it? He turned away. I hear the woodworms gnawing in the beams, he muttered. Would to God that they would gnaw a little faster. I can't say this discussion put me in particularly hopeful frame of mind. I left the library myself and went looking for Denton. Hello, he said, looking up from a book that he was reading, which presumably he had brought with him. You have a singularly focused look about you. What do you know about hares? I asked. He blinked at me. Come again? Hares. The animal, long ears, hops around, boxes in the springtime. You mean rabbits? Christ save me from Americans. No, they're bigger. You don't have hares? I had to think about it. Wait, I think they've got them up north. Snowshoe hares, they call them. Why? Is it possible that there could be a disease in the hares that might have affected Madeline? Something that she could catch from them somehow? Oh, I don't know of any. But is it possible? Something that could afflict both hare and human? Of course it's possible. Rabies affects them both. But I trust you're not suggesting that Madeline has rabies. No, no. I sank down in the chair. The hares around here act strange. All the locals say they're possessed. No, I don't believe that. I raised a hand to forestall Din's protests. Most of us go to the devil without him having to personally oversee things. But I saw a hare out in the moors that moved very strangely, and Maddie's sleepwalking reminded me of it. It sounded ridiculous when I said it out loud. I was grasping at straws and I knew it. But to his credit, Denton was apparently willing to grasp those straws alongside me. You think there's some possible connection? Possibly? Maddie was never sickly, but Roderick doesn't have it, so I thought it couldn't be just some miasma in the air or the water. The servants would have mentioned if there was some similar disease in the village. Yes, of course, I sighed. The mention of the servants reminded me, though. Madeline's maid. Do you know what she died of? She threw herself off the roof. I stared at him. This is not a good house for anyone, he said, but certainly not for those of melancholic temper. Price blood. Denton took pity on me, or perhaps it was just his way of holding on to that straw. It's still not a bad notion. There are diseases that only affect a very few people. Leprosy, for example. The vast majority of us are immune except for the poor devils who aren't. I nodded eagerly. So Maddie could be susceptible. The problem is that if I shoot a hare, I realize that I have no way of telling whether it's normal unless that there's something really extraordinarily wrong. Would you be able to tell? I'm not a veterinarian, he said, or a cook, but I suppose I could take a look at one and see if anything jumps out at me. I nodded. Then tomorrow I'll fetch you a hare. Small pause. This shit. Like the house is a curse. I don't care if she won't. Just get the fuck. Yeah. I mean, they said something about her dying in travel, but she's literally like rotting in bed and keeps going back to that lake. I mean, kind of crazy that he doesn't believe that, considering back then they considered sleepwalking to be like a possession. I mean, yeah, this is 1890, so maybe they're right after the revolution, apparently early in the book, according to our girl. They're on the cusp of the discovery of like germs and microorganisms and things like that. Also, they could 100% ask a butcher about that. That's what I was thinking, because there's that butcher in the town that they had do the side of beef for him, but everybody in that town is extremely wary of the hares that come from up there. So I don't know that anybody in that town would be willing. You know what I mean? That's conjecture. Let's continue. In the end, it was Hob who located the hare, by virtue of nearly stepping on it. He spotted it in the last moment, snorted, and pulled sideways, hopping on 3 hooves. I was rather startled myself, particularly when the hare didn't move. Just sat there, staring up at the pair of us with its wild, empty eyes. Go on, I told the hare. Walk a bit. It would do me no good to shoot a hare that wasn't afflicted by this nameless malady. It did not oblige. I slid off of Hob's back and took out the gun I used on small game, not cows. Come on, scoot. The hare stared at me. I took a step forward, then another. Christ, was I going to have to actually nudge the thing with my boot? Before I touched it, it turned and began that strange crawling walk. It moved more rapidly than I would have expected. I took aim, only to watch it vanish into a stubby copse of trees, which were either dead or doing a remarkable imitation of it. My own fault for being slow, I muttered. Hob, stay. I ground-tied him and went after the hare. The dead trees did not improve upon close inspection. I stepped inside the copse looking for the hare and found it sitting up, watching me. Right, I said. You've definitely got it, whatever it is. I started to sight down the barrel, although I could probably have bashed it over the head with the butt of my gun just as easily. Movement in the corner of my eye distracted me. I turned my head and saw another hare moving in the same unpleasant fashion. It looked almost spidery somehow. Ooh, God. Oh, that sent a chill up my fucking spine. Oh, God. I had the sudden absurd notion of a disembodied hand walking along on its fingers, or of living limbs separated from their own owners. Clearly Denton's dream had lodged itself in my brain. I turned back to the original, only to find that a third had joined it. All three of them stood up on their hind legs, watching me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood to attention. I shot one of them. Might have been the first of them, but they might also have been changing places. A child could not have missed at that range. Cops rang with the shot, and the hare collapsed. None of the other hares moved. They did not even flinch. A wave of tinnitus struck in the wake of the gunshot, and as I waited for the ring to subside, I realized there could be even more hares behind me now, and I would not hear them approaching. Which meant nothing, I told myself. I hate how the tinnitus seems to drown out my thoughts as well, so that I feel as if I'm shouting inside my own skull. They were hares, not wolves. Hare might give you a nasty bite if you grabbed it, but it wasn't going to go for your throat. I knew all this, and yet every instinct I had began to scream that something was behind me. Something dangerous. Something that was not a hare. I do not argue with my instincts. They kept me alive in the war. I spun around to find two more hares sitting at the edge of the copse watching. My hearing began to slowly return to normal, but the skin-crawling sensation that something else was there did not subside. I turned again, and the original three hares were now four, as if another had sprung up from the ground like a mushroom. Right, I said. I stomped forward and snatched up the dead hare. That's the... It moved in my hand. I flung it violently away, even knowing that it was a convulsion that many animals kick after being killed. I had shot it in the head. Could not possibly be alive. Muscle spasms, that's all. I was cursing myself for a fool when the dead hare began to crawl away. It did not try to escape. That was somehow the most horrible part of it all. It crawled back to its position in the circle of hares, and it sat up, despite half its skull being missing. It turned its head so that its remaining eye pointed at me and tucked its paws against its chest like all the others. Whatever looked out at me through that eye was not a hare. My nerve broke and I ran. Ooh, fuck, ooh, fuck, ooh, fuck me. I'm here, I'm home alone, guys. My skin is crawling. This is so fucking scary. Yeah, dude. When he said spidery in movement, I was like, oh, fuck no. There's no fucking way. Oh my god. What a terrifying idea. That they would, ooh, Lord, oh, God. Shit, okay. Okay, we're gonna keep... We're gonna keep going. Perhaps if I was a less skeptical and more credulous, I might have fared better. At the time, all I could think was that I could not have possibly seen what I thought I saw. The dead did not get up and walk around. Sometimes, however, the nearly dead do. I've seen men with terrible injuries run 100 yards to fall upon the enemy. I've seen men with bullets lodged in their skulls continue to fight, sometimes for days. Hell, Partridge, who was under my command, thought Ka was merely hit in the head until a doctor found the bullet hole almost a week later. Fortunately, he had the good sense not to try and remove it. So far as I knew, Partridge was still alive, although Ka complained about the bullet ever since. Ka had no sense of taste. It was possible that the hare had been like the partridge. Perhaps my shot hadn't been true. Perhaps when I thought that it was part of its head missing, it was simply bloody fur falling down in a particularly grotesque formation. The hares were the same dull gray-brown as the sedges, were they not? My eyes might have been playing tricks on me. Christ knew that I had been jumpy and my nerves had been playing up. No, I was not a reliable observer. I recast it in my head, trying to make an amusing, self-deprecating tale of it, and eventually relate it to Denton. The damn things all stared at me and I had a fit of nerves. Ran away from a pack of animals that wouldn't have come to the top of my boots. Can you believe it? Chest full of medals for valor under fire. And I squawked like a chicken because I flubbed the shot and the damn thing kicked in my hand. I forced a rueful grin. Between that and the cow, I'm not showing up well in the gunnery department. Then, despite my best attempts at a diverting tale, was not diverted. He draped his hands over his knees, a line forming between his thick eyebrows. That is most unsettling. For the pride of Galatia, certainly. Not that, he frowned. Roderick says that you are not particularly fanciful. I like to think that, though you wouldn't know it from this afternoon. I shrugged. Well, you know as well as I do, sometimes the oddest thing set off our nerves. True enough, Denton admitted. Soldier's heart, we called it after the war. I once had a bit of an episode because they had lined the street with flags and the wind came up and they were all snapping. The sound wasn't like cannon fire at all, but it still was, you know? I nodded. I did indeed know. Then one of the flags came loose and it blew toward me. He snorted. Found myself down a stairwell 2 streets over. His voice had found the light veneer of humor that we all get, but if we don't pretend we're laughing, we might have to admit just how broken we are. It's like telling stories at the bar about the worst pain you've ever been in. You laugh and you brag about it, and it turns the pain into something that'll buy you a drink. There, you see? I waved a hand airily. Nevros de guerre, the French call it. Makes it sound like a bloody pastry. Though I do feel bad that I flubbed the shot. I should have stayed to finish it off. Hopefully a fox or a falcon or something like that will take it before long. Denton's humor faded. He took a large swallow of the drink beside him. Perhaps you didn't flub the shot, he said, not looking at me. Of course I did. And got up and walked away. I didn't tell him about it sitting up and watching me. That went well beyond Nevros de guerre. He said nothing. The dead don't walk, I said, hearing my voice rise angrily. You of all people should know that. Denton looked at me for a long, long moment, searching my face for something. He must not have found it because he looked away and said, Ignore me. I'm becoming as fanciful as Roderick. I don't know what I know anymore. I stalked away and took my dinner in my room that night. Angus watched me angle the chair so that my back was against the wall and said nothing at all. Ooh. Ooh, shit. That is... Ooh, I'm not a fan. Ooh, shit. Imagine, oh God, in an age like that where there's a certain comfort in all the knowledge that technology brings, and in that time, what you knew was what you knew. Books may be available to enhance your knowledge, but it was generally experience that brought you the knowledge that you used in the day-to-day, and something like this would genuinely fuck me up. Get it together, get your shit together, leave, get the fuck out of there, leave. This manor house is fucking a devil circle. The whole land is a devil circle. Oh God, that hair scene really sent chills up my spine, because the imagery in this, like I said, is among the best I've ever seen. And I just, you know. Now chapter 8. Ironically, I dropped off to sleep instantly that night. Perhaps it was because all the tensions were too close to the surface again. Falling asleep quickly, whenever you have the chance, is the third thing you learn in the army. The first thing you learn is to keep your mouth shut and let the sergeants blunt their teeth on the people who can't. The second thing is to never pass up a chance to piss. First, sidebar, amen to that. I grew up on base. Never miss a chance to piss. Oh, always take a piss when you have a chance. God, that's advice to the fucking soul. I woke only once, when I fancied I heard a cry. It sounded like a male voice, deep and hoarse. I bolted upright in bed, grabbing for my pistol, but did not hear anything else. Battle nerves, I told myself. After the day I'd had, perhaps it was no wonder. I listened carefully, and just as I was thinking of getting up and prowling about, I heard Angus snore from the next room. I'm used to the sounds that Angus makes, of course, but his snore was quite legendary, and it's entirely possible that it might have worked its way into a nightmare and woken me. I put the pistol down on the night table and went back to sleep. I woke the second time to music. It was a glorious layered composition, half a dirge and half a joyous melody, the notes weaving and intertwining like the flight of mating birds. I knew at once that it was Roderick. No one else in the house played at all, and I doubt many people on Earth could play like that. The notes Roderick coaxed from that piano were far beyond my meager ability to comprehend that I can barely explain it to you. It was like sipping a fine vintage wine and knowing that there were complexities that you would never be able to taste, hidden depths that you could not understand. Roderick's music was genius, and I knew just enough to know that I could not appreciate just how far beyond me it truly was. I followed the music up to the observatory and leaned against the doorway, soaked it up. When he finished at last with a trailing set of notes that sounded more like a flute than a piano, I broke into applause. Bravo! Bravo! Roderick let out a shriek and jumped halfway off the piano bench, clutching his chest. I cursed myself for having overset his nerves again. I'm sorry, old man. Didn't mean to startle you. I didn't want to interrupt, that's all. No, no, it's all right. He sat back down onto the bench. I mean, it's not all right, but it's not your fault. Oh, hell. I edged into the room. Are you all right? Madeline is dead, he said. I stared at him. I knew the words he was saying, and they were in my own language, but I kept trying to parse them as something else, something merely sounded similar. Maddie couldn't be dead. She'd been alive 2 days ago. I'd spoken to her in the hall. We had sung songs around the piano. Are you sure? It was a foolish question. Of course he was sure. He loved his sister to the point of exiling himself to this miserable heap. But death is when you're allowed to ask foolish questions and to say the unforgivable things that'll be immediately forgiven. I'm sure, he said. Then checked. She had one of her fits. She stopped breathing. He stared down at the keys and touched one hesitantly, as if he'd forgotten how to play. Roderick, I'm sorry. I came into the room and thumped him on the back and did all the things that soldiers do with each other because most of us have forgotten how to cry. It was terrible. I said softly, I never wanted... I know. I've known I'd have to, but... I know, Roderick. I know. He straightened and turned away, his shoulders hunched. I heard her walking in the halls, and now... Oh. He shook his head violently. I blew out my breath in a long sigh. Maddie was dead, and had been inevitable, and yet it made no sense at all. She did not suffer, said Din from the doorway. Or rather, her suffering is at an end. Part of me wanted to ask if he could have been mistaken, if the catalepsy could present as the illusion of death. The other part of me knew that he was a doctor and that I should soldier, and I was just a soldier, and the death I knew was not a subtle thing. Can I see her? I asked instead. Madeline. Din and Roderick looked at each other. After a moment, Roderick said, She's in the crypt. I see no reason why you shouldn't, said Din firmly. Yes, Roderick said. Yes, of course, I'll get a lamp. The crypt was a long and winding way down narrow stone and steps in the back of the house. The cold damp became an active chill, and yet the air seemed drier as we reached the bottom, as if we had burrowed beneath the clammy air that held the house in its grip. I did not realize that the crypt was beneath the house itself, I said as I walked. Ground here is hard to dig, said Roderick simply. They blasted it to make the cellars. It was easier, I expect, to add the crypt as well. Like a church. He grunted. The stairs down only reinforced my opinion, though carved as they were with Gothic ornament. The old lords of Usher simply had no interest in simplicity. The door itself was another one of the pointed arch doors made of ancient wood, locked and barred. Roderick handed in the lamp and pulled out the bar of its sockets with a strength that belied the frailness of his arms. He set it down and we stepped inside the crypt. Cold. It was cold. A long, rough-hewn corridor led way, presumably deeper in the crypt. But the chamber we stood in held a single slab stone carved with crosses and a procession of mourners. Madeline lay under a shroud, faceless and featureless. Roderick stood over her protectively, his whole body bristling. I had thought to approach more closely to look at Maddie's face one more time, but Roderick looked so foreboding that I refrained. Really, what good would it do? Have you not seen enough bodies in your time? Maybe it helps other people, but it's just one more face to haunt your dreams. I went to one knee and prayed instead. The Lord's Prayer, dredged up from some long-ago memory of church services. When I was done, Din waited for a short moment, then touched my arm and ushered me away from the crypt and the slim white form on the slab. It came to me as we made our way up the steps that anyone could have been under that shroud. Could not tell that it was Maddie. Could not tell that it was anything but human at all. Roderick was so jumpy at dinner that he nearly set me off. He kept jerking upright and looking over his shoulder as if an enemy was going to emerge from the paneling and go for his back. Steady on, old fellow, I said. You're going to have me diving under this table at this rate. I hear the worms, he muttered. Soon they'll start on her. Unless they don't. I told myself that it wasn't my sister and I had no damn business being offended. Roderick stopped jumping, but began to wring his hands together. He had long, pale-fingered hands, but the way he scrubbed them one over the other began to redden them. I eyed this warily, but at least it didn't make me want to die for cover. Denton ate methodically through the food in front of him, not speaking. What he thought I couldn't guess. I ended up in the library after dinner, accompanied by my second bottle of liverit. It was terrible, but a hangover seemed like a great idea. Headache is always preferable to heartache, and if you're focusing on not throwing up, you aren't thinking about how the friends of your youth are dying around you. I didn't know why Maddie's death hit me so hard. I saw the Ushers a few times this season growing up, that was all. I could not say with any honesty that I had thought of them often before receiving Maddie's letter. Perhaps this miserable place had weighed down my spirit and left me vulnerable. Perhaps it was simply that she was the first person my age to die of illness instead of the jagged teeth of war. I slugged back the liverit straight from the bottle. My throat no longer burned, but the syrupy taste still made the hinge of my jaw ache. The room stank of moldy leather and the death of books, but I could no longer smell anything but the liverit. Angus found me eventually. He stoppered the bottle and pried me out of the chair. "Come on, child," he said. "I'm too old to carry you. Feet forward." I muttered something about letting me lie on the floor with my booze and my grief. "March!" Angus barked. And my hind brain took over, pointed me in the correct direction, and marched. I felt like hammered shit in the morning, of course. That was the point. Thought of food was nauseating, but if I didn't eat, everything was going to be a lot worse. I splashed water on my face, then braced myself on my hands, staring into the basin. Did it come from the tarn? Christ's blood. Maybe I was better off with the liverit after all. One of the few things I learned from the Brits who served with me was that if you're feeling dreadful, it helps to dress well. I dragged on fresh clothes. My tongue felt like it needed a shave. Angus came in, looked at me, grunted, and handed me my boots, which had been freshly polished. "Don't say it," I muttered. He gripped my shoulder briefly, but didn't utter a word. He shoved my feet in the boots and went to breakfast. My hand was halfway to the knob when I heard Roderick say, "I heard her knocking last night." Denton said something too quietly for me to hear. "On the door of the crypt," Roderick said, "trying to get out." "It can't have been, though, can it? She's dead. She's really dead, isn't she?" "Of course she is," I said, pushing the door open. "Your nerves are shot, and who can blame you?" I looked at Denton for confirmation. "Yes, of course," he said. "Only nerves." "Yes," said Roderick, "of course. You must think me quite mad, Easton." "Not at all. Neros de guerre. De guerre." I don't know how that's actually pronounced. "We've all got it. It'd be more extraordinary if you weren't overset." He began wringing his hands together again. His knuckles were so red that they looked as if they might start bleeding. "For God's sake, leave off, man," I said wearily. "Like Lady Macbeth." "Out! Out! Damned spot!" Roderick let out a yelp like a kick dog and stared at me with huge eyes. I immediately felt guilty. "Sorry, Roderick, it's just everything." Sat back. "Why don't we leave? Go to Paris. Be good for you." "No," he cried, almost a shout. "No, He swallowed, his throat bobbing. "No, I can't. Not until she's... Not until..." His voice shrank. "Not yet," he whispered finally and fled the table. "Oh, shit. Oh." "Think about it," I called after him. I looked over at Denton. "I wish you'd help me convince him." "He won't go yet," said Denton. "You should probably go, though. It's no place for decent folk." "When do you think Roderick might be willing to travel?" "Not for a time," he said. "Not until he's, certain that his sister had been properly laid to rest." I rested my elbows on the table and my face in my hands. "Damnable foolishness," I said. "The dead are dead. They don't care." "They don't fear ghosts in Galatia?" he asked. I could hear the edge of a smile in his voice, and also what that smile was costing him. "No, we're as superstitious as anyone else," I admitted. "Someone must sit with the body for 3 days to make sure that wandering spirits don't take possession of their flesh. But I don't believe that the dead actually care about those things." I dropped my hands. Come now, doctor. How many deaths have you seen? Has any one of them ever returned to complain about how they were laid out? Not one, he admitted. Still, I would not look for Roderick to leave just yet. Not until he's certain. Certain of what? That the dead don't walk, said Denton, closing his lips over his teeth and refusing to say anything more. The dead don't walk. Thought that beat in my brain like a fragment of song and rang in my ears on an endless loop. I even flexed my jaw in exactly the right way to trigger a bout of tinnitus, but as soon as it passed, the words were there again. The dead don't walk. Dead don't walk. But they don't. I had missed my shot at the hare. It was certainly dead by now, bled out somewhere, or a fox had come along and finished the job, or a weasel, or a hawk. I didn't know the local predators, but presumably they were the same as in Galatia. A loose dog, a cat from the village. There were no cats in the Usher house. Get a cat for the rats, I thought. And there are no rats either. Why are there no rats? Is Roderick so poor that his pantry cannot even tempt a rat? It was possible, though it occurred to me that I had seen no animals around that staring house except for the horses in the stables and the mad-eyed hares on the heath. Which brought me back to hares again. The dead don't walk. I rode Hob despite a light drizzle. The sound of his hoof beats broke into the rhythm that lent itself all too well to the line. Clip clop, clip clop. The dead don't walk. The dead don't walk. Clip clop. Christ's blood, I was going to have to break into my third bottle of liver if this kept up. Dinner was no relief. Roderick kept absent-mindedly wringing his fingers together and then catching himself. Denton was even more American than usual. If his accent got any broader, I was going to start singing the Star-Spangled Banner and shaking his hands with the tablecloth. The dead don't walk. Except that you're supposed to sit with the dead for 3 days to make sure they don't. And Roderick had said that he could hear knocking on the door of the crypt. No, that was ridiculous. I retired to my chambers and finished off the dregs of the second bottle of liver under Angus's disapproving eye. Don't scowl so. There's not enough in here to give a hangover to a gnat. How long are you going to stay here? Said Angus. I don't know. I licked the syrupy taste off my lips. How long did we stay? Till Roderick agreed to leave, whenever that was? Was I doing any good, or was I just eating food and burning firewood that he could ill afford to spare? 3 days, I said abruptly, setting the empty bottle on the table. 3 more days and we'll go. At midnight, I went to the crypt. It was not a reasonable thing to do. I knew that. For all my vaunted skepticism, the thought had taken hold of me that if no one watched the body, something terrible would happen. Or perhaps it already happened. The dead don't walk, but what of those with catalepsy? You heard stories of people buried alive, of coffins opened to find that someone had clawed at the lid. I crept down the slick stone steps, the candle in my hand, trying not to make no sound. The crypt door was barred, but had no lock. The bar itself was an immense thing, as thick as any wrist. It looked oddly new, with pale edges where the wood would not have yet weathered. Please excuse me 1 second, I gotta blow my nose. Okay, sorry about that. I set down the candle and lifted the bar carefully, holding my breath as it scraped against the metal, holding it in. Each tiny sound echoed up the steps. At least I'll be able to hear if anyone comes down behind me, I thought. I hope. I had no idea what I'd say if anyone did. Plead grief, I suppose. Say that I had to come see her one last time. Remind Roderick of the superstition that the dead must be watched for 3 days. I was not worried about it. People in mourning were allowed to do odd things. This was absolutely a strange thing to be doing. Maddie was dead, I did not doubt it. It was astonishing that she had been alive when I saw her, but she could not have lasted more than a few days. I knew that. I also knew that if I had to see her, I also knew that I had to see her. Every sense I had honed over the years on the battlefield was screaming that something was not as it appeared. I could feel it. Dead don't walk. I picked up the candle and opened the door. A wave of tinnitus rose in my ears, and I waited it out, seeing the light flicker on the ground, on the shrouded form of the slab, the high ringing note pulsing inside my skull. When it finally faded, I went forward. I stood over the shroud form of Madeline Usher and set my hand to the cloth, and hesitated. Part of me wanted to abandon this fool quest. Why was I here? Why was I skulking in around Roderick's manor like a thief disturbing his sister's rest? I was an old friend, yes, but I was violating all laws of hospitality and friendship. It was not my place. But something was still very, very wrong. I pulled back the shroud and froze. It was Maddie. She did not seem to have deteriorated at all in 2 days. The cool air of the crypt might have saved her, though I did not think it was so cold as that. Perhaps she had simply looked so shocking before she had died that mere decay could not worsen it. Her hair clung to the shroud and shed fine white hairs across the stone surface of the slab where I'd moved it. That was not what stunned me. Her neck had been broken. She had been very carefully arranged, the shroud draped to hide the terrible angle of her throat. And though she had died before they had time to bruise, there were livid finger marks splayed across her throat. I stood so long that the candle dripped wax past the guard and spilled onto my hand. The sharp burn brought me back to myself, and I tilted it so that none fell on the shroud of the slab or the dead woman's skin. I then carefully replaced the shroud and took my candle and crept back up the stairs, moving as silently as a scout on patrol. I was now in enemy territory, and my life and Angus's might very well hang in the balance. Bitch, what? Bitch, what? Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Whew. What a twist. I will say not from a million miles. I expected her to go down there and her still be alive. That was well within my expectations. I was expecting her to go down there and she opens her eyes. Hello, Easton. That was well within my expectations. Her neck being broken by like somebody's hands. That was outside what I even conceived would have been the case on this. That is, what a twist. What a small twist there. That's got my brain moving. The dead don't walk. That's gonna live in your brain, yeah. Yeah, finding the rhythm for that it reminded me of the there was this one manga that I read a while ago about magical girls who came to the world, but they were like demonic entities, so they came in and just said magical while they slaughtered millions of people. That was kind of where I was pulling from when I was reading it. What a chapter. What a couple of chapters. 7 and 8 have not disappointed at all. Now, chapter 9 is where I was going to stop. Let's see where it lands, because it's not a long chapter. And I'm kind of enthralled. Now, chapter 9. It was very unpleasant to sit down to a meal when you were trying to determine which of your breakfast companions is a murderer. I drank my tea and met no one's eyes while my thoughts raced and rattled around my skull. Denton was the obvious choice. Denton was a doctor. He could not possibly have examined Maddie and not noticed the broken neck. But at the same time, as a doctor, he should have had 101 ways to kill someone without resorting to such a crude method of murder. Still, that was not enough to rule him out. Men panic sometimes. Perhaps it'd been a crime of passion and unrequited lust for Madeline. I had seen no such indication, but men have hidden such things before. It had to be Denton. Didn't it? But just when I had convinced myself thoroughly of Denton's guilt, I would glance at Roderick out of the corner of my eye. If there was ever a man racked by a guilty conscience, it was Roderick Usher. He startled at every sound, turning his head constantly as if expecting someone was creeping up on him. One of the servants brought in more tea, and he yelped and dropped his fork with a clatter. And there was the way he had reacted when I called him Lady Macbeth. Even if we ignored that, surely he had helped to lay his sister out on the slab. Surely he would have noticed the broken neck. No, the most logical answer was that they were both in on it, and whichever one of them had killed her, the other had helped cover it up. Would Roderick really cover up his sister's murder? And why murder her at all? She was nearly dead already. What possible gain could there be in hastening her death along? I found that I could believe in Denton. I found that I could believe that Denton would cover for Roderick, but not that Roderick would cover for Denton. I had seen Usher under fire in the trenches. I knew what sort of man he was. He had plenty of courage but little nerve, and he had loved his sister dearly. I could think of no hold that Denton might have over him that would cause him to cover such a thing. The doctor could hardly be blackmailing Usher, who had nothing worth taking any longer, and Usher's sins, whatever they might be, were not the sort that would cause a man to stand by while his sister's neck was snapped like a hare. I thought, seeing again in the staring eye of which hare. I jammed my fork into my eggs, and the tine scraped across the plate. Roderick shrieked. "I'm sorry," he said, covering his face. "I'm sorry, there's this damned problem with my nerves. I think I hear... It's all right," I said automatically. I pushed back from the table, no longer hungry. "I think I'll go for a ride." The weather had not cleared at all. It was still drizzling, and the sky was turning an unpleasant shade of greenish gray. I was barely over the causeway when I saw movement in the grass and found a hare staring at me. I cursed at it and spurred Hob. He didn't deserve that, and he bounced a few times to let me know that he didn't deserve that. I didn't look over my shoulder, but I could feel the hare behind me, like an enemy sentry watching to see if I'd strayed into disputed territory. I fancied that as soon as I was out of sight, it would go crawling to alert the other hares to my presence. Hares don't do that, of course. Hares aren't like rabbits who actually post sentries around their warrens and alert each other to danger. Of course, with these accursed things, who knew anymore? Maybe I was right and there was a disease. Maybe it was making the hares as paranoid as Roderick. Something clicked in my head. I was suddenly back in that sheep farmer's hut on the mountain, listening to him rant about sheep diseases. "The hydrophobia," he'd allowed. "Aye, they get it. Not the same as dog, you hear? Dog gets mean. Sheep gets stupid." Suppose there was a disease, and it had two forms. One like Madeline's, but Roderick had also declined, hadn't he? Here, acute sensitivity to sounds. Could these be symptoms of not stress, but of pathology? Hop slowed. I looked up, pulled from my thoughts, and saw another hare at the edge of the road, sitting bolt upright. My horse gave it a wide breath, and I didn't try to rein him in. For a moment, I was half afraid that the thing might dart out and bite at Hobbs' legs. I saw two more hares before I made out... Ooh, God. I saw two more of the hares before I made out a far more welcome silhouette. That of Miss Porter sitting in her little stool, umbrella deployed over her head, carefully dabbing at a painting of a mushroom. I was seized with a sudden fear for her, that the hares might be watching her as well. Watching her and preparing to... what? Bite? Attack? Spread the disease somehow? Miss Potter bent over her easel, no doubt in contemplation of boletes or one of the other myriad of fungi that infested Usher's land. Fungi. A second click inside my head. Fungi. I jerked my head up. Not even the blaze of tinnitus that followed the movement could drown out the thought. Fungi. Horse. The mold that coated the wallpaper and crept into the library books, the mushrooms that hunched themselves up from the earth, the affliction of Angus's fish. What had Miss Potter said upon our first meeting? I do not know what you may know of fungi, but this place is extraordinary. So many unusual forms. Could it be fungus, not a disease? Worse, one unique to this region. Was that why Din could not identify it? You said there are fungi that infect living beings, I said, sliding off of Hobbs' back. You mentioned fish. What about humans? Of course, she said, as if we had been in mid-conversation and I had not just galloped up to her on horseback as if the devil himself were on my tail. Hob, always pleased to have an audience, pretended that our great sliding halt had been his idea and pranced to show Miss Potter that she should be impressed. Ringworm is a fungus. Thrush, which you find on infants, is caused by a yeast that is found on many species. There are others, though some are rare. Are any deadly? I led Hob closer. He rolled his eyes, clearly thinking that it was walk and run and stop and walk, and his rider needed to make up condemn mind. Miss Potter tapped her finger against her lips. Yes, though I don't know that they are identified as such as often as they should be. People came back from India with little bumps that covered their face and neck, and that is believed to be a fungus. Men have died of it. And there are molds in the form of houses that were strongly believed to contribute to miasma. Now, of course, we have germs, so miasma is no longer in vogue, but I cannot say that the mold could have weakened a person's lungs so that germs might take hold. She shrugged eloquently. In short, yes, I believe there are likely fungi that affect humans that are deadly. Certainly they kill fish. And there are the ones that hunt worms, which is not the same as infection, but wait, what? I held up a hand. Did you say a fungus that hunts worms? Oh, yes. It caused quite a stir in the proceedings of society last year. A German named Zopf discovered a fungus that actively seeks out nematodes. Poisonous miasma gas. It was a sign of how disordered my nerves had become that I did not derive nearly enough enjoyment from hearing Miss Potter pronounce the word nematode with an accent so British that it nearly had its own stiff upper lip. I could only imagine packs of mushrooms leaping across the moors in pursuit of prey. It should have been funny. I told myself firmly that it was funny. Hunt how? Adhesive properties, said Miss Potter. They secrete a sticky net of hyphae. And once the worm is ensnared, the net cells germinate on the worm and extend a network through it, devouring it. Does that kill it? Eventually, yes. Her eyes flicked away. I gathered that it was not a pleasant experience for the worm. I licked my lips. Hyphae. Multicellular filaments. What differentiates a mold from a yeast, in essence? An idea was forming in the back of my mind. I did not like it one bit. What do they look like, these hyphae? They can take a number of different forms, said Miss Potter. But the most common one is white filaments. Filaments. I thought of Angus's description of the fish. Like slimy felt. Felt, certainly, if it's a thick enough mat. She smiled tranquilly up at me, but in small amounts it would look like fine white hairs. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. My mind is blown. I'm thrown. I'm tweaking. Lieutenant Easton, where are we going? A crypt, I said. It's very hard to explain. I just need you to look at something under a magnifying glass. Is it a fungus? It's a dead woman's hair. Miss Potter stopped in the middle of the hallway. I had hustled her into the manor, hopefully without alerting anyone, and was trying to get her down to the crypt. It would have been easier if she hadn't kept stopping and demanding explanations. I must assume you refer to Miss Usher. Lieutenant, I have come to think of you as a sensible person, but there is something quite unsavory about all of this. Unsavory seemed like such a dire understatement that I gave a bark of laughter. I know. It's utterly appalling. But Miss Potter, I swear to you on my honor as soldier. I have, she said in blighting tones, known far too many soldiers. I could not argue that. Frankly, I'd only said it because I thought it was the sort of thing that might appeal to English women. Hip hip cheerio, God save the Queen, and so forth. I placed my hand against the peeling wallpaper and took a deep breath. Miss Potter, I said, I swear to you on the graves of soldiers that I have buried with my own hands, I mean no harm to you or anyone in this house. But if I try to explain it, you will think me completely mad. It is easier to show you, and if you tell me that I am mistaken, I will escort you back to town and make a clean breast of everything to the master of this house. Eugenia Potter looked at me with her small, bright eyes and gave a sharp nod. Very well. Lay on, Macduff. My heart was in my throat as that we would meet Denton or Usher and one of the servants on the way to the crypt, but the vast house worked in my favor for once. Saw no one. I led her through increasingly dim corridors, only to realize that I had no candle or lamp. I swore softly in Galatian. Miss Potter cocked a jaundiced eye at me. I do not know what that word means, Lieutenant, but I have my suspicions. Sorry, Miss Potter. If you'll hold my umbrella, I will provide a light. She reached into her enormous bag and withdrew a small, shuttered lantern. It was my turn to stare. Miss Potter! Is that a housebreaker's lantern? It is none of my affair what others may use such a design for, she said primly. The shutters are most useful for providing specific directional lighting when I have been working on a painting long enough that the sun has changed position. She lit the candle inside the lantern and adjusted the shutters, then handed it to me. Madam, I said fervently, you are a wonder. We navigated the stairs to the crypt with the aid of the lantern. I pulled the bar from the door and pushed it open. The light from the shutter lantern fell upon the empty slab and the shroud lying forlornly on the floor and nothing more. Madeline was gone. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That's chapter 9. My God, how fucking creepy has all of that been? Miss Potter is my favorite. Yeah, I love Miss Potter. What a treasure. What a treasure of the world. Welcome to my college society of 1890. So that is chapter 9. That is 7 through 9 as was scheduled today. That leaves me in a good spot to pick up tomorrow night. Leaves me in a great spot to pick up tomorrow night. Tomorrow we'll probably finish the book, actually. I think there are 13 chapters in here, if I'm reading that right. Yeah, 13 chapters, so we'll go 10 through 13 for a little epic finale of the reading of the book. This has been genuinely fantastic for me. He's infected with the fungus. Yeah, I mean, that's what's... When she said the white hairs, I was like, oh, shit, homie. The dead are fucking walking. Flip clop. But there's fungi in the poisonous miasma gas. It's in the miasma gas, the poisonous miasma gas. Oh man, that means everybody would be infected though. Or was it the water she almost drowned in the lake? But then how did it get inside Roderick? Was Roderick drinking from the lake? Was it the mouth to mouth that Roderick might have given her to try and save her life? What was it? How did the fungus get in there? Why is it all over the books? How come he can hear the worm? The worms are inside his fucking ears. Oh fuck. The worms are in his fucking ear. Oh no. Oh shit. The worms he hears, they're tendrils. They're the little fungus tendrils inside of his body. He can hear them. He can hear them expanding and chewing through his stuff, his materials, his juices and whatnot. Oh, we have theories. We have theories. We're gonna finish this beautifully tomorrow. This is gonna be an epic finale. Fish eat worms, humans eat fish. Yeah, fair enough. It might have been the fish, but they didn't. You know what? They did mention fish at the beginning of it, didn't they? That would have been their main sustenance. See, my thought is that he saved her from the lake, and it was like a mouth to mouth thing, and they shot their little white hairs inside of his mouth as they were cultivating inside of Madeline. But you know what? That explains. Probably all the hairs are dead too. The orange eyes are probably a sign of. Well, we'll save our theories. We'll save our theories. Think of. Consider it. Consider it overnight. Consider it overnight. 24 hours from now, we will have finished this book. And we'll see. we'll get our answers. But boy, I kind of don't want any. In fact, they later replaced her exactly because they said her hair was falling. Her hair would have all fallen out by that point. So the fine white strands. Then he described them as like floating, and things like that. So, man, what a book. What imagery. What a twist that her neck was broken. Who broke her neck? That's the mystery I want solved now. Why'd they break her neck? Or is your theory correct? Did somebody see her walking and was like, oh, fuck no, and break her shit? Is she trying to attack somebody and got her neck broken that way? What's the scoop? Hair pulled away. The hair did pull away. Yeah, that's true. Oh, okay. Enough conjecture. I'll see you tomorrow night for our epic finale. Good night. I love you.